back to the channel, ladies, gentlemen, lizard people, and variants thereupon. If you're new here, my name is Weebo Jones, and today we enter that most dread of relationship statuses, the friend zone.
If she wanted to hook up, would you hook up?
Oh, totally. Look at her.
He is not your friend, ladies.
There's always going to be a level of attraction. If that's ever on the table, that's not a real friendship.
But you've also found a characteristic in her that you like enough to be friends with her. What's the third step on that?
Guys are not going to be friends with girls to be friends with them. I was like, if they want to have a friend, they'll go find a guy.
Let's start this video off with a question, shall we?
Here we are at the Utah State University Library for some interviewing to ask people if they believe that men and women can be just friends.
If you ask women this question, it's more than likely the answer is yes.
Do you believe that men and women can be just friends?
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Men and women can be friends, even if the guy is attracted to them.
Of those guy friends, do you think any of them secretly like you? And be honest,
Probably, yeah.
do you think that guy is interested in you?
Yes. Okay, maybe you can only be just friends in high school, because most guys won't just be my friend.
Would Dave hook up with you if you gave him the chance?
Well, yeah.
Do you think Trevor liked you?
Yes.
And
I know he did.
Shoot.
would he hook up with you if you wanted to hook up?
Yeah.
So he likes you. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is men and women can't be friends.
No, we can be friends.
But you're just friends, but he likes you.
Yes.
But if you ask men this question, they'll be more likely to say no than the women were.
I think it'd be hard to do.
No. No. I don't believe so. No.
I guess what I'm saying is no.
The reason stated is often that they find themselves attracted to women, more so than not.
If she wanted to hook up, would you hook up?
Oh, totally. Look at her.
Don't be sarcastic. I need the truth.
Seriously, yeah.
All right, there we go.
Because of physical attraction. It's not possible.
But these are college examples. Let's take a moment to consult with our relationship experts on the matter.
No.
How come you're saying no?
It just never works. There's always going to be a level of attraction. If that's ever on the table, that's not a real friendship.
Guys are not going to be friends with girls to be friends with them. I was like, if they want to have a friend, they'll go find a guy. These guys are not your friends. They're planting seeds and hoping someday that it'll sprout.
If a man is friends with a woman that he is attracted to, personally is attracted to, which means not only are you attracted to the way that she looks, but you've also found a characteristic in her that you like enough to be friends with her. What's the third step on that, on that graph there?
So some people will opine with absolute certainty that men and women could never be friends. Just like people probably asserted to Orville and Wilbur Wright that humankind would never fly, or how people will, to this day, assert that the earth is flat with all of the certainty. They'll go on to clarify why a friendship between a man and a woman is untenable, that the guy, in most instances of friendship, is willing to sleep with a woman should an opportunity present itself.
When you and your boyfriend finally break up, who do you go run into? Me. It's about patience. All I've had to do is play it cool and stay in the game long enough and wait for the day that you come banging on my door, crying your eyes out. And I just have to play stupid, like, why are you crying? He is not your friend, ladies.
And while some research suggests that cross-sex friendships are complicated by covert attractions, especially among the emergent adult population, I don't find this argument to be at all conclusive on the matter of whether cross-sex friendships are viable. If the crux of the issue is purely grounded in the possibility of attractions and the opportunistic nature of humankind, then the argument just isn't borne out to me. especially not in the current day when human sexuality is not as taboo as it has been in the past. Because, dear viewers, in my brief 26? Is that how old I am? Oh my goodness. Huh. In my brief 26 years on this planet, I have had plenty of individuals express a level of attraction to me both before and during the course of my relationship. And believe it or not, these interested parties have been men, but they have also been women. And all variants thereupon. And therein lies the linchpin of the issue with the asserted reasoning of individuals both college-aged and otherwise. In a world where men could sleep with men that they find attractive, and women could sleep with women that they find attractive, or you could sleep with both sexes that you happen to find attractive, how does one navigate friendships when behind every curtain is the possibility that your friend is just waiting in the wings to sleep with you? That logic would have you thinking the current friendship scene is a veritable minefield of potential opportunistic sex pests with no interest then in what you can do for them and their reproductive organs in the current climate. And that is too nihilistic for my tastes. No. Dear viewer, can you imagine if you had to go about your day fielding all manner of sexual propositions, real or imagined, if you had to keep an eye out for every individual you encountered to make sure that they had no improper motives? Can you imagine if you had to signal in reassurance to the public your true intentions every time you spoke a word or said an action that was ambiguous?
Pause what? You said something gay, so you gotta say no homo, or else you a homo. But what did I say gay? You said you was gonna give this dude everything you got, no homo. That's not gay.
That sounds like an exhausting, lonely, friendless, and isolating existence, of which I want no part. That logic might have had its merits in a more antiquated time period. But it's safe for me to say that the logic, when applied in a modern context, so today, is flawed at best when you account for the current day situation. Believe it or not, men and women today can be friends. It happens all the time. I myself have several successful friendships with men spanning years. But still, a few questions remain. What's going on here? Why is there this prevailing sentiment that men and women can't be just friends? Why does it appear that men might be more struck with this affliction than women? And what can be done to disabuse people of such antiquated mindsets? We'll be getting to that eventually, but we're gonna take the long way to get there because I think it's more fun. So, I hope you enjoy the video. Sure, you've noticed, if you've spent any amount of time consuming fictional media, that there is a prevailing rule of thumb which generally asserts that the relationship statuses of the given male protagonist and a given female protagonist are inextricably linked. It's a narrative device commonly leveraged by the writer to create emotional depth, fast-track character development, and construct a compelling storyline. This is obviously true of the romance genre, but it can also be found with surprising frequency folded into the narratives of genres which are categorically less concerned with matters of the heart, to such a degree that it's actually got a name. The romantic subplot refers to a secondary storyline within a larger narrative that focuses on the development of a romantic relationship between two characters. Sometimes, romantic subplots are done quite well. For instance, the fake relationship that eventually becomes real between Katniss Everdeen and Peeta Mellark, concocted to keep them alive during the Hunger Games, is actually integral to the success of the Revolution arc against the Capitol, which Katniss endures across all 3 books. Sometimes, romantic subplots are done poorly. Take the forced romance between Natasha Romanoff and Bruce Banner, introduced in Age of Ultron, which has been criticized by audiences for feeling forced into the movie and detracting from the larger plot. But sometimes, romantic subplots don't happen, despite what the audience might expect. Pacific Rim is a good example of this exact subversion of audience expectations. By the end of the movie, Maury and Beckett were not in a committed romantic relationship. They didn't even kiss at the end, where we would have expected them to, despite the fact that Maury and Beckett were drift compatible, trusted each other, and she saw him shirtless that once. how could they not be in a relationship by the 2-hour mark, you may be asking yourself. It would seem to me that audiences everywhere have been conditioned to subscribe to a sort of emotional shorthand in the face of the barest hint of what could be mistaken for romantic subtext if you tilt your head, squint, and look really closely at it. And it's a pervasive, prevailing disposition amongst audiences. If you have spent any significant amount of time on the internet, specifically in fandom communities, you may have come across the phenomena commonly referred to as shipping. Shipping online refers to the act of one wanting or supporting two individuals to be involved in a romantic relationship. People ship characters all the time for many reasons. Sometimes it's that subtle character chemistry you notice where there's just the barest crumb of attraction between two individuals. Sometimes it's an act of creative expression to explore potential scenarios beyond established canon. Sometimes people might personally identify with characters, projecting their own desires or experiences onto fictional beings. Sometimes it creates a sense of community amongst fans to be able to connect with others over shared enthusiasm. And sometimes it can be done as a form of reflection for underrepresented individuals in the media. Whatever the reason for it, where there is shipping, there is almost certainly shipping wars. No, we are not talking about the 2012 reality television series on the transportation of bulk items, although I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that a logistics reality show got more seasons than Teen Titans did, but I digress. Shipping wars refers to a situation where there are verbal arguments between people who have different opinions about romantic relationships between characters of a show, book, movie, etc. And the example that Urban Dictionary uses is actually the Robin Raven versus Robin Starfire ship war. For the uninitiated, during its heyday, the original 2003 animated cartoon Teen Titans was popular within online shipping communities, pitting fans of the Robin Starfire pairing and fans of the Robin Raven pairing against each other. The Robin Starfire pairing is inherited from the 1980s comic run, where a romantic relationship between Robin and Starfire's comic counterparts had been previously canon, making the budding romance of the cartoon seemingly inevitable. But the Robin Raven ship kind of snuck up on people a little bit, beginning with the release of the Season 1 episode Nevermore, which teased audiences of the eventual Trigon arc, gaining traction in Season 3 with the episode Haunted and psychic bond that ensued between the pair, and culminating in Season 4 as the series kicked off the Trigon arc with Robin rescuing a depowered Raven from the grip of her demon father. At the risk of starting a shipping war in my own comments section, it would appear to me that at no point in the series do the creators telegraph to the audience that there is to be a romantic entanglement between the half-demon and the boy wonder. And yet, the shipping community clung onto those scraps of vulnerable intimacy like starving children unsure of when they'd get their next meal. It caused quite the skirmish online, particularly with other shippers whose own pairings were at odds with the Rob Ray ship. And this whole platonic versus relationship controversy that rears its ugly head in fandoms, it's a pattern that's replicated itself in media time and time again. Harry and Hermione from the Harry Potter series are a good example of a platonic friendship ship that fandoms have historically rallied against in fiction and in heated debates online. Katara and Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender is a good example of fandoms rallying against established canon in favor of an even more juicy enemies to lovers fanon ship. Roy Mustang and Riza Hawkeye from Full Metal Alchemist is a bit more ambiguous in its portrayal, as nowhere during the course of the anime nor manga run do the Colonel and Lieutenant actually engage in anything that's overtly romantic. In fact, Roy is out there messing around with other women, while people are insisting that he is secretly in love with Riza Hawkeye. But their proximity to each other, their history, their strong emotional ties, and the ambiguity this presents the audience with lends the Roy Eye fans enough material to make a compelling argument that they are secretly romantically intertwined. And I know I'm ripping this apart, but I am one of those in the camp that believes that this ship is canon. Secretly canon. It's ambiguous, but I totally 100% believe, I am bought into the Roy Eye question. I think it's yes. But it's not confirmed, and we don't know, so I could go on, but we would be here for years. As you can see, there is quite a range of credibility here when it comes to shipping, and there are so many more examples of otherwise platonic or seemingly platonic character relationships being reframed by the fans to fit a more romantic narrative. And you would think that my pointing out these instances lessens my argument from the previous section of this video. That simply because people see potential romance between a male and a female platonic character, where there canonically isn't any romance, supports the notion that men and women can't be just friends. Because people are biologically primed to mash their body parts together with the nearest compatible bits, and hence of course projecting that tendency into fiction, that legitimizes the thing that I am trying to disprove. Case closed, right? Right? Right, Weebo? Bet you thought. Oh my god. I hate that I am the one who might be introducing my audience to the concept of gay shipping, but it's important to my thesis, so it must be done. At great personal sacrifice. Your personal sacrifice, not mine. Slash is the word used in fanfiction to denote homosexual pairings. Usually male on male, sometimes female on female. It's a term that's often interchangeable with yaoi or yori, which are the Japanese equivalent. The gendered Japanese equivalent, I might add. The term slash finds its origins in the 1960s Star Trek community, of all places, with the plethora of Kirk/Spock stories which emerged during the time. These stories were usually authored by female fans of the series to be distributed privately amongst friends and community, and would eventually spread to other fandoms, such as Starsky and Hutch, Blake 7, and The Professionals. In the current day, you can find buckets of slash fiction all over the popular fanfiction websites like ff.net and AO3. Slash fanfiction has been an unwavering phenomena, as shippers in the current day will take any morsel, any crumb of emotional intimacy as license, nay, and obligation to ship individuals who are of the same sex ad nauseam. Which brings me to one of the oldest surviving slash pairings in all of history. The Iliad is an ancient Greek epic poem attributed to Homer and is regarded as one of the oldest enduring pieces of literature. The central character of the Iliad is the Greek hero Achilles, known as the greatest of all Greek warriors. Achilles was the son of Thetis and Pelo, the king of Thea, and a member of the famed Argonauts. Another character of note within the Iliad is the Greek hero Patroclus. There is a substantive amount of mainstream fandom shipping, or what some might be calling academic conjecture, which analyzes the nature of the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, and has become the subject of much discourse within the classics community. Some scholars suggest that their relationship is nothing beyond a profound friendship, with Patroclus acting as Achilles' close confidant and advisor, while others have taken this relationship to suggest a more romantic or homoerotic relationship, despite that not having been outright stated within the ancient text. Regardless of what camp you fall in, it's a safe bet to say that Achilles and Patroclus are close in the Iliad, at least until Patroclus is killed. I mean, after all, one does not simply go on a vengeful rampage to decimate a prince of Troy in single combat, only to deny him his funeral rites, drag his corpse around behind one's chariot back to camp, and leave his body to rot over the death of a mere acquaintance. But then again, the point of the Iliad is to tell the story of Achilles, the Greek hero whose rage and vengeful spirit brings about ruin as a cautionary tale. Dear viewers, anything less than an overreaction would be out of character. Suffice to say, the Greeks are an interesting case study when it comes to love and relationships, and there's no better way to demonstrate this complexity than through a thorough linguistic analysis. Harken back with me, dear viewer, to the previous year's Valentine's Day special, where we discussed the triangular theory of love. How love is comprised of three key components, those being intimacy, passion, and commitment, and how the different combinations of these elements result in different kinds of love. Well, it turns out that this idea of multiple kinds of love is not an idea original to Robert Sternberg. The ancient Greeks recognized 6 different philosophical relationship terms to conceptualize those relationship styles we would generally use the word love for. This word, agape, notes a universal type of love, such as the love for strangers, nature, or God. It's a concept similar to Christian charity or modern-day altruism, a general sense of, as Thomas Aquinas puts it, to will the good of another. The word eros in Greek refers to a sexual or passionate love and is the root word from which the term erotic is derived. The word philia in Greek carries the connotation of a close personal bond between friends on the level of close siblings almost. The word storge is exclusively used for familial love, like the unconditional love between parents and their children, or that relationship bond between brothers and sisters. The word philatia is a love reserved for oneself, the modern equivalent being self-esteem or a healthy appreciation for oneself. And the word xenia is a word that refers to the Greek concept of guest friendship, which can be defined as the hospitality relationship between host and guest, the social expectations and responsibilities that come with each of those roles, rooted in generosity, gift exchange, and reciprocity. To the ancient Greeks, xenia is a very important moral obligation, and I would venture to guess modern-day Greeks as well, if my in-laws are any indication. So you see, if I were to say the words my love, to the Greeks I could be referring to friend, family, the world, or my lover, and no one would be able to tell without proper context. But if I were to say storgemu, it's very clear, based on the word choice I'm using, that I'm talking about a family member and not a lover. Because saying storgemu to my husband is a little weird. It's a lot of weird. Anyway, and honestly, going through this whole section and putting it together, I am beginning to understand why other people hate the English language. I mean, I still hated going through all of the declensions in ancient Greek when I was studying it in college, but I am beginning to understand some people's grievances with the English language. Not all of them, but some of them. A quick count of all the words for love across all possible declensions in the Iliad finds that agape appears about 63 times, philia 5 times, and eros 6 times in the entirety of that Homeric work. But you know what word does not appear in the Iliad? Or the Odyssey, for that matter? Blue. The ancient Greeks, they have all these fun little words to describe the different philosophical forms of love, but they didn't have a word which directly translates to blue. How do we know this? Well, we can speculate based off its utility, or the lack thereof, in the same ancient texts that we were just analyzing. In 1858, the eventual 4-time British Prime Minister and fellow classics enthusiast, William Gladstone, published his book entitled Studies on Homer and the Homeric Age. The 3rd volume of this publication included an original thesis on color perception in ancient Greece, suggesting that the ancient Greeks categorized colors mainly in terms of light-dark contrasts rather than hue. This conclusion was supported by a 30-page statistical analysis of color used by Homer both in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Far more sophisticated than my quick little count of the various forms of love from the earlier section. Gladstone found the color black, or melas, in all its various declensions to be used 170-odd times. Likewise, white was used 100 times, give or take. Violet, around 6 times. Yellow, less than 10 times. Red, about 13 times. And purple, with all its compounds and kindreds, about 23 times. But not blue. I mean, sure, now the Greeks have a word for blue. It's pronounced bleu, but it's never used in the entirety of the massive ancient texts, not even in places where the word would reasonably be applicable. The sky is, as Homer describes it, starry, broad, great, both iron and copper in color, but never blue. Likewise, the sea is oddly enough described in a similar manner to oxen. Yes, those oxen. It's described as wine-colored, not blue. And that, we can conclude, is because the Greeks did not have a word specifically for the color blue. In fact, this is not a trait unique to the ancient Greeks. Indian epics from 4 millennium ago, ancient Chinese writings, Icelandic texts, The Hebrew Bible and many others fail to use the color blue as a descriptor for things we would otherwise describe as blue. But they all definitely had words for black, white, and red at the very least. A study of color language development across a wide array of cultures throughout time suggests, with a high degree of reliability, that there is a predictive pattern for color term acquisition in human languages. Starting first with dark cool and light warm, or what we would regard as black and white, because they are the most useful distinctions to make, and therefore the most immediate acquisition for any culture. Next is red as the decided follow-up color, given its likeness to blood and reliable appearance in human expression through flushing. Then either green or yellow, and then both green and yellow, so as to better distinguish between ripe and unripe fruits. Then blue, as well as, later on, brown, then finally pink, purple, orange, or gray as the seventh color acquisition. Weebo, why are you giving us a lesson in human color acquisition? Well, because I don't know if you're aware of this, dear viewer, but while we as a human species create and leverage our language on a whim to describe and categorize our perception of the world, language can also very much affect the way in which we perceive the world. In English, there are 11 different color categories, including a category that specifically distinguishes the color blue. So when I show you an assortment of colors, assuming you're not colorblind, you can reasonably differentiate the blue hue from the green hue. Conversely, the Himba language has only 5 color categories. Sarandu, used for reds, oranges, pinks, browns, and some yellows. Dambu, used for some greens, reds, beiges, and shades of yellow. Zuzu, used for most dark colors, including black, dark red, dark purple, and dark blue. Vappa, used for lighter colors like yellow and white, and Buru, used for greens and blue without distinction. And it turns out that the Himba people would take longer than an English speaker to distinguish the blue from the green on this color array. However, the Himba people can more easily distinguish between 2 similar greens, while the rest of us miserable single green category having people struggle. All of this is to say that color naming is critical in shaping color categories and enhancing categorical perceptions. This conversation that we just had is a very specific, hyper-focused example that demonstrates the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which suggests that the language a person speaks influences their thought process, which I recognize is way too vague to mean a whole lot to anyone, so allow me to be more specific as I posit my own thesis, hypothesis, theory thing. That being that the more categories that you have at your disposal, the better you can distinguish between 2 similar but disparate concepts. So let's take this idea and apply it to our emotions, namely, love.
My emotions! My emotion!
Alexithymia, in simple terms, means without words for emotions. It's when a person has significant difficulty experiencing, identifying, feeling, sourcing, and expressing emotions. It occurs in approximately 10% of the general population, and in 50 to 80% of the autism spectrum disorder, or ASD population. Normative male alexithymia is the low-level version of alexithymia, often present in those who tend to conform more to specific cultural norms of hypermasculinity. For example, restriction of emotional expressions such as the oft-parroted "real men don't cry" saying, demonstration of status or toughness, sentiments of anti-femininity, and presenting as always in control and unburdened by vulnerability. And despite what the name suggests, normative male alexithymia can be present in both males and females, although it does occur with higher frequency in the former group than the latter. And at least part of this can be attributed to how people are socialized. One such integral social interaction is that of the parents with their children growing up, and the difference in the use of emotion words exhibited by parents to their daughters versus their sons. A difference which actually influences the rate of emotional language acquisition by the child, with daughters demonstrating higher levels of emotional language acquisition than sons within a 2.5 years time difference. I have a whole separate, currently 17-page script dealing with male emotionality and how social and cultural influences can greatly affect emotionality, sitting in my project backlog, just waiting for me to finish writing it, so I won't bore you to death with a deep dive on the topic just quite yet. But I would like to focus on one of the main characteristics of alexithymia, that being a difficulty in identifying feelings and distinguishing those feelings from bodily sensations of emotional arousal. Emotional arousal, you'll find, is a state of heightened physiological activity and strong emotions. For example, in the case of anxiety, an elevated heart rate can mean that you are undergoing some amount of anxiety, but it can also be a symptom of intense cardio, excitement, sexy times. However, a tendency of those with panic disorders to mistaken normal physical sensations, like that elevated heart rate, as a symptom of anxiety, and consequently trigger a panic attack. Now, to bring it all together, if you'll recall, we established in the earlier section that the more categories you have at your disposal, the better you can distinguish between two similar but disparate concepts. This, as we discussed, is true of colors, which are ultimately just a visual perception of light waves on a visible spectrum received by the retina, detected by the optic nerve, and interpreted by the brain to affect our visual perception of the thing. But even though you may encode the light waves for blue and orange in your brain, denied an adequate category for the description of that hue on the light spectrum, you may struggle to differentiate between blue and green or orange and red. So, if that is the case for colors, why would that not also be the case for emotions? Love, any of our emotions, are ultimately the result of sensory input from all of our senses, which are passed through chemical transfer to the limbic system, interpreted by the brain, causing our hypothalamus to trigger physiological responses through the rest of the body. And so, it would stand that if a person is given a limited set of categories a person can fill in their lifetime, that the only kind of love a man can have toward a person of the feminine persuasion is a motherly love, a sisterly love, or a loverly love, and she's not the sister, and she's not the mother, then the natural category to place her in your own head, if you have any sort of warm fuzzies toward her, would be lover, or potential lover. And if you've never been given a reason to develop the emotional intelligence to better distinguish between disparate conceptions of love, whether they be eros, agape, philia, storge, the works, then you're never questioning that categorical system, and every single woman outside the family becomes just another potential fuck buddy. The reverse is possible with women, obviously. The fanfiction community and all its pairings and shipping wars are evidence of this phenomena enough. It's just apparently less obvious on a real-world stage. There is great power in language. The more language you have at your disposal to describe the world around you, the more complexly you can conceptualize reality. The more language you know, the easier it becomes to predict outcomes and commune with other humans. Language separates us from a base existence. Language can shape how we believe, think, feel, perceive, and act. In the right order, our words can tell stories, describe our surroundings, instruct others, and it has the power to change hearts and minds. Unfortunately, the English language doesn't have an easy shorthand way to differentiate the love felt between platonic friends from the love of an intimate, long-term sexual partner in the same way that the Greeks did. A distinction that's unfortunately complicated by social roles and expectations held over from a more traditional time. These relationships are further overwhelmed by the amount of will they won't they storylines and friends to lovers trope representations in fictional media, which have been fed to the public ad nauseum. But in this moment, right now, dear viewers, as you're watching the screen and listening to my voice, we are the most advanced humanity has ever been, both technologically and intellectually. Why then can we not also strive to be the most advanced linguistically as well? I'll see you in the next one. Peace!